Hi everybody. Take two. Here we go. We're back onto the iceberg again, and that was after a Titanic moment, as it were. So here we go. So we got to the part where we were talking about our conscious awareness, and that's the aspect of ourself that's present, that's right now, that you're aware of right now. So as you're watching, as you're listening, the thoughts that are in your mind, that's your conscious attention. And really the role of this aspect of the mind, the conscious mind, is for thinking, is for analyzing. So it's an analytical awareness that uses critical faculty, to differentiate. So it's a differentiating aspect of mind. Making judgments, decisions. We're looking at actively listening and feeling activity, and sorting and filtering perceptions. And it's a limited aspect of awareness. So it's only in a region of 7 plus or minus 2 things that we can be aware of one time. So if you were to look around, be attentive to what you can notice, and that will be the capacity of your conscious mind. So it's just where your awareness is right now. And that aspect of your mind that thinks critically, that aspect of your mind that differentiates. So the analytical part. Now, you can see below the surface there is representing your unconscious. So your unconscious is really everything else. So at that time, when I said that your conscious mind is processing 7 plus or minus 2 chunks of information, so that could be, what you can see, what you can hear, what you can feel. While that's all occurring, at an unconscious level, that your unconscious is processing 1.2 million bits of information at one time. So there's a whole lot of processing taking place in the background. So that would be running your thoughts, your emotions, running your body, digesting what you had for tea tonight. That's all happening at an unconscious level. And then at that level would be all of your memories. So everything that you've ever seen, heard, felt, touched, tasted is stored at an unconscious level. So this is our frame of reference. So when we see the world, when we experience the world, when we're looking at new things, we're able to contrast them with our memories of what's familiar. So the next area there really is how our unconscious mind learns. So throughout our life, we go through different developmental stages. So just to give you an idea, when we're born, when we're first born into the world, we have only instinctive behavior. So for example, we'd have a fear of heights, we'd have a fear of loud noises. Most other things are actually learned. So during those first 7 years of our life, that's what we call the imprint phase. So that would be where we're learning about the world around us, and we're forming an impression of how we relate to that world around us. And at that time, we're like a blank canvas. We're just absorbing and learning very, very fast. So that's a positive thing in that, for example, learning how to walk, learning how to talk. We're doing it at an incredibly rapid pace. But also at that time, we don't have that conscious mind awareness. So we don't have anything to form critical or contrasted judgments. So as a young child, we're really like just an unconscious mind, an absorbing and a learning mind. So most of that stuff is positive, but we also absorb some negative things as well during that time. The next phase would be what we call our modeling period, and that's where from about 7 to around 14, we're unconsciously choosing role models and emulating role models. So, for example, when I was a boy, when I was a child, a lot of the role models that were on TV, in sort of matinee, well, I wasn't quite matinee age, but some of these role models like James Bond or whatever used to smoke cigarettes. And then as a child, they used to be what were called sweet cigarettes. They were little sweets that looked like a cigarette. So you think about that habit, that adult habit of smoking that was very popular at that time. Really, children were already emulating it before they ever did it, because they were choosing role models, and they picked behaviours that were idiosyncratic with people that they admired. And then during that sort of 14 to 21 period is really like a socialization. That's when we're forming relationships, we're leaving school, we're going to work, we're becoming a young adult, we're having a social life. So that's socialization. So really those are the three key developmental stages. And throughout those stages, we'll be learning things on an unconscious level. So these are thought processes. So what I thought would be useful for all of you on this topic of beliefs would be for you to be able to after tonight's session, just have a greater awareness of what's going on. And these are the 4 thought processes that tend to hold beliefs together, and the kind of beliefs that cause us problems. So the first one would be having a demand. So demand is like when we have a rule in place. So I'll give you an example here. Imagine that I like being on time, but there are certain times I know that I can't be. There's just situations that are outside my control. So I might be going to London to give a talk, and the underground gets shut down, or I've got to walk, or I've got to get a taxi. Now, if I couldn't accept that, it would cause great duress. I'd end up in sweating and cursing and angry and frustrated about things I couldn't possibly control, right? So having a demand means that there's an unflexible rule taking place, right? The next one would be a drama. So drama is when we inflate something to being more catastrophic than it is. So it could be, yeah, it's a problem, it's a bit annoying, but making something bigger is a drama. So imagine, oh, that tube's been stuck in that station. It means I'm going to be 10 minutes late. It's not the end of the world, right? But if I went, oh no, it's going to be late, and I'm going to, and then there's a whole load of other, emotional responses and duress I'm causing myself. So it really means that the demand that I'd be having is not realistic. It's fine to have that preference, but sometimes certain things in life, there are situations that are outside of control. So having a preference, being punctual is good, but sometimes demand, sometimes situations don't lend themselves. The next one, so we've got drama, and then I can't cope. So if you think about what that actually means, it means I'm not able to exist if XYZ happens. Yeah. So let's give an example. Imagine like I didn't like crowds. I'm going, oh, it's crowded there. I can't cope with crowds. By having that thought, I'm actually depreciating my own resilience and heightening my sensitivity. So it actually mean that I'd be less good at coping if I had that belief that I couldn't cope. And then the fourth one, which is a very common one, is what's called a pejorative put down. So that would be like a negative put down. So imagine that we picked one quality about ourselves that we perceived as not as good as we could be, and we just focused on that, and then we defined that as who we are. So think of an example here. Let's think of an example. So imagine like somebody picked the worst attribute they had, or the worst skill they had, and they let that define who they were. Or let's say they made a mistake one time. Imagine, I deduced when I was at school, when I was playing football at school, I didn't really like football, and I used to daydream a lot when I was playing football. And at one moment, the ball came my way, and I just kicked it into the net. And so I hadn't been paying attention that we'd actually changed sides, and I'd scored a home goal. And at that moment, I and everyone else deduced that I wasn't good at football, right? So, but actually there was just one instance. That was one event. That was one happening. That doesn't define who I am as a person, right? But, but very often people will take all their failures and take that on as their identity, as who they are. They failed at something in the past. That means that they are a failure. That would be an example of a pejorative put down. So these four thought processes of four of the ones that make up a lot of people's anxieties or fear triggering, and so on, right? So there's 8 unhealthy emotions and the healthy counterparts. So these are just, so for example, we've got anxiety. Now, anxiety is really fear-based, and very often people get anxious about things that they need not be anxious about. So it really means overreaction, okay? Concern would be the opposite. So concern would be a healthy emotion, to be concerned about something, but to be anxious is often an overreaction, okay? It's not a functional emotion for a lot of people. Depression would be where somebody withdraws right of themselves, they retract. It's usually to do with failures in the past and projecting, shortcomings into the future. But whereas sadness would be more of a, sadness for a loss would be more of a healthy, natural emotion, but depression would be excessive in most instances. Anger and annoyance, well, when we get angry, we can lose our shit, basically. But anger can be very often overreacting, being triggered by things which are maybe not necessarily valid of responding in anger. So annoyance would be a healthy response. So we talk about getting back into balance. So some areas in our lives where one may be, overreacting to things. Unhealthy jealousy, that would be in a relationship being very, very possessive, excessively possessive, controlling. Healthy jealousy may be being tolerant, but just maybe being a bit concerned if there were valid reason. Unhealthy envy would be like somebody else has got a new car and trying to convince oneself that they don't like it, or saying derogatory things about that. But a healthy envy may be going, hey, I'd like one of those. What do I need to do to get one? That would be like a healthy envy. So it's really learning to differentiate between what are healthy emotions, and really when they're unhealthy, it's just when they're excessive. They're excessive to the circumstances, excessive to the context. Say, like, for example, having guilt. Guilt is a emotion, imagine a person's sin, they've broken some, moral code, or they haven't done something they should have done, or they've done something they shouldn't have done. But actually, unless it's something really terrible, then remorse, just regret, can be often sufficient, and apologizing or acknowledging one's wrongdoings. So you can see the difference between guilt and remorse. Guilt may be excessive for some people. It may be an excessive response to a situation, whereas an appropriate response may be remorse. Then we've got hurt and disappointment. Well, hurt is when other people's actions, failing to reach our expectations, hurt us. We feel slighted by it. But actually, being disappointed by someone, they haven't lived up to our expectations, would be more healthy. Because, can you see the difference there? Being hurt and just being disappointed. They let me down. I feel really hurt. I feel really terrible. Or, oh, I thought they were more reliable than that. I feel a bit disappointed in them. You see the difference there? It's a big difference. And then we've got shame and we've got regret. So shame would be where someone's burying their head and how can I live with myself? How can I deal with what people think? whereas regret means that someone's just simply regretful of their actions. So I made a bit of a fool of myself the other day. So you imagine somebody went to a party, they got drunk, they said a few silly things, knocked over, I don't know, knocked a vase over and smashed it. If they felt shame, that might be an excessive emotion because it's not an unredeemable situation. Whereas if they think, oh, I regret doing that, that was really silly last night, I'll have to apologize. Do you see the difference? So on the left-hand side, these are often excessive responses. And on the right-hand side, these would be more healthy emotional counterparts to those eight unhealthy emotions.